The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky landscape of Kepler 442b when the alien ship touched down near the human settlement. Jake Harrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched the sleek vessel settle onto the flat ground with barely a sound. He had been working on the colony's new water treatment facility since dawn, but the arrival of visitors always meant his day was about to change. 3 figures emerged from the ship, their movements graceful despite their strange appearance. The tallest one stood nearly 8 feet high, her skin shimmering like cut crystal in the morning light. Her companion was shorter, but equally striking, with the same translucent quality that made them seem almost like living glass sculptures. A third figure remained near the ship, apparently standing guard. Jake set down his tools and walked toward the visitors. As the colony's chief construction engineer, he often dealt with newcomers, though most were human settlers rather than alien researchers. The tall figure approached him with measured steps, her large eyes studying him with obvious interest. "Greetings, human," she said in perfect English, though her voice carried a musical quality that no human throat could produce. "I am Professor Zethkara of the Vortanian Academic Council. This is my research assistant, Clicks. We have traveled." "Far to reach your settlement?" Jake nodded politely. "Welcome to New Haven Colony. I'm Jake Harrison, construction engineer. What brings you to our little corner of the galaxy?" The professor's expression shifted slightly, and Jake caught what might have been amusement in her crystalline features. "We are conducting research on the development patterns of various species across the galaxy. Specifically, we study how different intelligent beings solve basic survival challenges when placed in new environments." Click stepped forward, holding what looked like a recording device. "The professor has documented similar studies on 43 different worlds. Her research contributes to our understanding of evolutionary adaptation and problem-solving capabilities." "That sounds fascinating," Jake replied. "How can we help?" Professor Zethkara gestured toward the landscape around them. "We require a demonstration of your species' natural shelter-building abilities. Based on our preliminary observations, humans appear to be moderately intelligent tool users with basic construction instincts. We wish to document these capabilities for our research." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You want to watch me build something?" "Precisely." The professor activated a device that projected a holographic display showing various crude shelters. "These are examples of structures we have observed on other worlds. Simple huts, basic lean-tos, primitive windbreaks. Each species approaches the challenge differently, but the results are generally similar." The display showed images of rough shelters made from sticks, leaves, and stones. Some were barely more than piles of debris arranged to block wind and rain. Others showed slightly more sophisticated designs, but all were clearly basic survival structures. "Your task is straightforward," Professor Zethkara continued. "You must construct adequate shelter using only materials available within a 5-kilometer radius of this location. You may use basic tools that your species would naturally possess, but no advanced technology. The structure must provide protection from this planet's weather patterns." Jake studied the holographic examples for a moment. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" "Take as long as necessary. Most species complete such structures within 2 to 3 days. We have observed that rushing the process often leads to structural failures that provide valuable data about stress responses and problem-solving under pressure." Clicks adjusted the recording equipment. "The professor's research has shown that shelter building represents one of the most fundamental expressions of a species' intelligence. The methods used reveal much about spatial reasoning, resource management, and planning capabilities." Jake nodded slowly. "And you want to document the whole process?" "Every detail," Professor Zethkara confirmed, "from initial site selection through final construction. We are particularly interested in how humans approach the challenge compared to other species we have studied." The professor's tone carried a note of condescension that Jake didn't miss. It was clear she expected him to produce something similar to the crude shelters in her holographic display. Her research had apparently led her to believe that most species, including humans, possessed only basic construction abilities. "I assume you have some experience with building?" she asked, though her expression suggested she expected a negative answer. "Some," Jake replied simply. "I've been involved in construction projects since I was a teenager. Helped build most of the infrastructure here in the colony." "Excellent. That should provide interesting data about how your species' limited experience translates to independent problem solving." The professor activated additional recording devices. "We will establish our observation post here while you select your construction site." Jake looked around the area, taking in the terrain with a practiced eye. The landscape offered diverse resources: a nearby stream, several types of trees, rocky outcroppings, and various plant species. The ground showed good drainage, and the prevailing winds were predictable based on the vegetation patterns. "When would you like me to start?" he asked. "Immediately, if possible. We are eager to begin documentation." Professor Zethkara settled onto a portable chair that Clix had produced from their equipment. "Please proceed naturally. Pretend we are not here." Jake almost smiled at that. The idea of pretending not to notice an 8-foot crystalline alien with recording equipment was amusing, but he understood her intent. "I'll need to do some preliminary work first. Site analysis, resource assessment, that sort of thing." "Of course. We have observed that most species begin with some form of area familiarization. Usually involves walking around, picking up sticks, and testing the ground firmness with hands or feet." Clix held up the recording device. "The professor's data shows that site selection rarely takes more than 30 minutes for most species. They tend to choose obvious locations near water sources or natural wind barriers." Jake nodded and began walking around the area, though his actions were far more systematic than what the aliens expected. He moved in a grid pattern, stopping frequently to examine soil composition, test drainage, and observe sun angles. Every few minutes, he would crouch down to examine something more closely or use his hands to test the firmness of the ground. The professor watched with interest as Jake spent nearly an hour on his initial survey. "Fascinating. This human is showing more thorough site analysis than we typically observe. Most species make quick decisions based on obvious factors. Perhaps his construction experience influences his approach," Click suggested. "Possibly. Though we should not assume that limited experience with basic building translates to sophisticated planning. He is likely following instinctive patterns that appear more complex than they actually are." Jake continued his methodical examination of the site, making mental notes about everything from soil composition to prevailing wind patterns. He identified several potential water sources, cataloged the types of stone available, and assessed the structural properties of various trees. In the area, after 90 minutes of careful observation, he returned to where the aliens waited. "I think I've got a good understanding of what we're working with here." Professor Zethkara made notes on her device. "Excellent. Your site analysis was more thorough than we typically observe. Most species complete such assessments much more quickly." "I like to be thorough," Jake replied, "especially when building something that needs to last." "Indeed. Now we are eager to observe your actual construction process. Based on available materials, we anticipate you will create a simple lean-to or basic hut structure." Jake looked around the site once more. "I should be able to do better than that. Give me until tomorrow morning to gather materials and plan the build. I'll start construction then." The professor exchanged a look with Clix. "Very well, we shall return at sunrise to begin documentation." As the aliens returned to their ship, Jake remained at the site, his mind already working through the details of what he planned to build. The professor's expectations were about to be exceeded in ways she couldn't imagine. The first rays of sunrise painted the sky orange and pink as Professor Zethkara and Clix returned to the construction site. The professor carried her recording equipment and a comfortable observation chair, expecting to spend the day documenting simple shelter construction. She had reviewed her notes from the previous day and prepared to catalog what she assumed would be typical primitive building behavior. Jake Harrison was already at the site, but he was not alone. A woman with short brown hair and work clothes stood beside him, examining a collection of tools laid out on a makeshift table. Both humans appeared to be engaged in serious discussion about something the professor could not hear. "Greetings, human Jake," Professor Zethkara called as she approached. "I see you have brought assistance." Jake looked up and smiled. "Morning, Professor. This is Lisa Parks, my colleague. She's an electrician and systems engineer. I thought her skills might be useful for this project." Clicks activated the recording device. "We did not anticipate collaborative construction. Most species we have studied approach shelter building as individual tasks. Humans work together a lot," Lisa explained. "We figured two people could build something better than one person alone." Professor Zethkara made notes on her device. "Interesting. Collaborative behavior may indicate more complex social structures than we initially assessed. However, we still expect basic shelter construction regardless of the number of participants." The professor settled into her observation chair and prepared to watch the humans gather sticks and begin building. Instead, she observed Jake pulling out several strange devices from an equipment bag. He held up something that looked like a small metal box with a digital display. "What is that device?" she asked. Jake looked at the instrument in his hand. "Soil pH tester. I want to check the acidity levels before we start digging the foundation." "Foundation?" Clicks repeated. "Most species we observe simply place structures on the ground surface. That works for temporary shelters," Jake replied, kneeling down to take soil samples. "But if we're building something that needs to last, we need proper foundations." Lisa was using her own collection of tools to examine the ground in different areas. She had a small device that she pressed into the soil at regular intervals, recording numbers in a notebook. "The drainage looks good over here, Jake. Water table is about 6 feet down." Professor Zethkara watched with growing confusion as Jake used his soil tester in multiple locations, creating what appeared to be a systematic map of ground conditions. This was far more detailed than the brief ground poking she had observed. "On other worlds, are these standard tools for your species?" she asked. "Pretty standard for construction work," Jake answered, not looking up from his testing. "You need to know what you're building on before you start building." Lisa had moved to examining the trees in the area. She was not just looking at them, but measuring their diameter with a flexible measuring tape and testing their bark with a small knife. She made careful notes about each tree she examined. "What is the female doing?" Clicks asked. "I'm checking the structural properties of available timber," Lisa replied. "Different trees have different strengths and uses. This one here is perfect for load-bearing beams, but these smaller ones would be better for joinery work." The professor made more notes. "Your species appears to have more detailed knowledge of materials than we anticipated. Most beings simply use whatever wood is closest." Jake stood up and brushed dirt from his hands. "If you're going to build something, you might as well build it right." "Lisa, what do you think about that spot over there for solar exposure?" Lisa walked to the area Jake indicated and held up a small device that looked like a compass. "Good. Southern exposure. We'll get maximum sun throughout the day. The angle looks right for passive solar heating, too." "Solar heating?" Professor Zethkara asked. "You plan to incorporate energy collection into your shelter?" "Why not?" Jake replied. "The sun's free, and this planet gets plenty of it." "Might as well use it to keep the place warm." The professor exchanged a look with Clicks. The humans were discussing concepts that seemed far beyond basic shelter construction. Solar energy utilization was something she had only observed in advanced civilizations. Jake pulled out a notebook and began sketching. His drawings were not crude stick figures, but detailed technical diagrams with measurements and annotations. He drew multiple views of the same structure, showing it from different angles and including interior layouts. "Is that some form of ritual marking?" Clicks asked, pointing at the sketches. "Building plans," Jake explained. "I always draw out what I'm going to build before I start. Helps me figure out how much material I'll need and how everything fits together." Lisa looked over his shoulder at the drawings. The roof angle looks good for snow load, and I like the way you've positioned the windows for cross-ventilation. Windows? Professor Zethkara stood up from her chair. You intend to install transparent sections? Of course, Lisa said. Natural light is important. Plus, windows help with ventilation and temperature control. Jake pointed to his sketches. I found some natural crystal formations yesterday during my site survey. With a little work, they should make decent window material. The professor stared at the technical drawings. The sketches showed a complex structure with multiple rooms, carefully planned proportions, and sophisticated features she had not expected. This was not the simple hut she had anticipated documenting. Your plans seem elaborate, she said carefully. Not really, Jake replied. Just trying to make good use of the space and materials. No point in building something uncomfortable when you can build something nice with the same effort. Lisa had moved on to examining local plants. She was collecting samples of different species, testing their flexibility, and making notes about their properties. These long grass stalks could work well for thatching material, and these vines are strong enough for binding. The female is conducting botanical analysis, Clicks observed. This suggests knowledge of plant properties beyond simple gathering. Lisa knows her stuff, Jake said. She's helped me with a lot of construction projects. She's got a good eye for what materials work best for different applications. Professor Zethkara watched as Lisa continued her systematic examination of local plant life. The human was not randomly collecting vegetation, but was clearly selecting specific species based on their structural and functional properties. How do you know which plants to choose? The professor asked. Experience mostly, Lisa replied. Plus, I did some research on the local ecosystem before we came out here. The colony's database has good information about plant characteristics. Jake was now using a different device to measure angles and distances around the construction site. I want to make sure we orient the building correctly for the prevailing winds. No point in having the weather blow rain in through the door. You are considering meteorological factors in your design? Professor Zethkara asked. Of course. Weather's one of the most important things to think about when building. You've got to work with the environment, not against it. The professor realized that her assumptions about human construction capabilities were being challenged. These humans were not approaching the task as simple survival shelter building. They were engaging in sophisticated engineering analysis. Lisa had found a small stream and was examining its flow patterns. This could work for water supply, Jake. The flow rate looks steady and the water's clear. Good, I was hoping we could incorporate running water into the design. Jake made notes on his sketches. We'll need to plan for both supply and drainage. Running water? Clicks asked. Most species we observe carry water from natural sources. That works, Jake said, but if you can bring the water to where you need it, life gets a lot easier. Plus, proper drainage prevents foundation problems. By midday, the humans had completed what they called their site analysis and resource assessment. They had tested soil conditions, cataloged available materials, analyzed plant properties, measured solar exposure, studied wind patterns, and created detailed construction plans. Professor Zethkara reviewed her notes with growing bewilderment. The humans had not yet begun actual construction, but their preparation work was more thorough than anything she had observed in her decades of research. When will you begin building? She asked. Jake looked at his sketches and then at the materials Lisa had collected. Tomorrow morning? We need to gather our primary building materials today. The foundation work will take most of the day to do properly. Foundation work? The professor repeated. You can't build a good structure without a solid foundation, Lisa explained. It's the most important part of any construction project. As the humans began collecting stones and timber, Professor Zethkara wondered if her research framework was adequate for documenting what she was witnessing. These humans were not behaving like any species she had previously studied. The third day dawned clear and warm as Professor Zethkara arrived at the construction site. She expected to finally see the humans begin their actual building work after 2 days of extensive preparation. Her recording equipment was fully charged, and she had prepared detailed observation notes. Based on similar projects she had documented on other worlds, Jake Harrison was already hard at work, but what she saw made her pause in confusion. Instead of the simple ground clearing she expected, Jake was digging a precise rectangular trench about 2 feet deep. The edges of the trench were perfectly straight, and the depth was consistent throughout. Lisa Parks worked beside him, using some kind of measuring device to ensure everything was level. "Good morning, Professor," Jake called out, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We're getting the foundation started." Professor Zethkara set up her observation post and activated her recording devices. "This excavation seems quite extensive for basic shelter construction. Most species we have observed simply clear the ground surface." "That might work for a temporary hut," Lisa replied, checking her measurements again. "But we're building something that needs to last. A proper foundation. Prevents settling, keeps moisture out, and provides a stable base for the walls." Clicks pointed his recording device at the trench. "The humans are demonstrating more complex earth-moving behavior than anticipated. This suggests planning capabilities beyond our initial assessment." Jake began placing stones in the bottom of the trench, but his method was nothing like the random rock-piling Professor Zethkara had observed on other worlds. Each stone was carefully selected for size and shape, then fitted precisely into place. The stones interlocked like puzzle pieces, creating a solid, level surface. "How do you know where each stone should go?" the professor asked. "Experience," Jake replied, hefting a large flat stone. "You learn to see how different shapes fit together. Plus, I'm trying to create a level surface that won't shift over time." Lisa was working with a different material entirely. She had collected various types of clay from different locations and was mixing them with chopped plant fibers. The resulting mixture looked like a thick paste that she spread between the stones. "What purpose does that mixture serve?" Clicks asked. "It's a natural mortar," Lisa explained. "The clay binds everything together, and the plant fibers add strength and flexibility. It'll harden into something almost as strong as concrete." Professor Zethkara made notes about the humans' use of composite materials. This was far beyond the simple stone stacking she had expected to observe. The foundation taking shape was engineered with precision that rivaled structures built by much more advanced civilizations. By afternoon, the foundation was complete. What had started as a simple rectangular trench was now a perfectly level platform of fitted stones held together with organic mortar. Jake had even included drainage channels that would carry water away from the structure. "The foundation work is finished," Jake announced. "Tomorrow we can start on the walls." "That was just the foundation?" Professor Zethkara asked. "Most species. We observe complete entire structures in the time you have spent on the base. Building right takes time," Lisa said. "But it's worth it. A good foundation means the rest of the construction will be easier and the final structure will be much stronger." The next morning brought the start of wall construction, and Professor Zethkara's confusion only deepened. Jake began by setting up a framework of wooden posts, but his method was unlike anything she had seen. Each post was carefully shaped and fitted into precise notches cut into the foundation stones. "Those joints look very complex," Clicks observed. "Are such connections necessary for basic shelter?" "They're not just necessary, they're better than simple connections," Jake replied, checking the alignment of a post. "These joints distribute weight evenly and won't come apart even in strong winds." Lisa was working on preparing wall materials. She had collected bundles of long plant stalks and was weaving them into large panels. Her technique was sophisticated, creating a tight, uniform weave that looked almost like fabric. "Is that decorative work?" Professor Zethkara asked. "Insulation panels," Lisa replied. "These will go between the wall studs to keep heat in and cold out." The weaving technique creates air pockets that provide excellent thermal protection. As the walls rose, the aliens observed construction techniques that seemed far beyond basic building skills. Jake used no metal fasteners, yet every joint was precisely fitted and incredibly strong. His understanding of wood grain and structural stress was evident in every cut and connection. "Where did you learn these techniques?" the professor asked. "My father was a carpenter," Jake replied, carefully fitting another timber joint. "He taught me that if you're going to build something, you should build it to last." These old joinery methods are stronger than most modern connections. Lisa had moved on to creating what she called thermal mass walls. She was building thick sections of wall using stones and clay, but her construction method was carefully planned to absorb and release heat throughout the day. "These walls will collect heat from the sun during the day and release it at night," she explained. Natural climate control. Professor Zethkara realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. The humans were not just building shelter. They were creating a sophisticated environmental control system using only local materials and traditional techniques. Jake began installing what he called passive solar features. Using the crystal formations he had found during his site survey, he created windows that were perfectly positioned to capture sunlight at different times of day. The crystals had been carefully shaped and polished to provide clear views while maintaining structural integrity. "Your species appears to have advanced understanding of solar energy principles," Clix observed. "It's not that advanced," Jake replied. "You just have to think about where the sun is at different times and plan accordingly. South-facing windows collect heat in winter, and overhangs shade them in summer." The window installation demonstrated remarkable skill. Jake had created frames from fitted timber that held the crystal panels securely while allowing for thermal expansion. The result was both functional and beautiful. Lisa was working on ventilation systems. She had designed a series of carefully positioned openings that would create natural airflow through the structure. Cool air would enter low on the north side, while warm air would exit high on the south side. This creates convection currents that move air through the building without any mechanical systems, she explained. "It'll keep the interior comfortable even on hot days." Professor Zethkara watched as the humans installed their ventilation system. The airflow principles they were using were based on sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics and fluid motion. By the end of the day, the basic structure was taking shape. The walls were partially complete, showing a level of craftsmanship that impressed even the aliens. Every joint was precise, every measurement was accurate, and the overall design showed careful planning and skilled execution. "Your progress is remarkable," Professor Zethkara admitted. "The structure already demonstrates features we have not observed in any of our previous studies." "We're just getting started," Jake replied. "Tomorrow we'll work on the roof system and start installing the interior features." "Interior features?" Clix asked. "Built-in furniture, storage systems, maybe a small workspace area," Lisa said. "No point in building a structure if you're not going to make it comfortable to live in." That evening, as the aliens returned to their ship, Professor Zethkara reviewed her recordings with growing amazement. The humans were not building basic shelter. They were creating sophisticated architecture that incorporated advanced engineering principles. "The humans are exceeding all our expectations," she told Clix. "Their construction methods are far more advanced than anything we have documented. Should we update our research parameters?" Clix asked. Professor Zethkara looked at the partial structure rising from the landscape. "I think we need to completely revise our understanding of human capabilities. What we are witnessing is not primitive shelter construction. It is advanced engineering adapted to local conditions." The structure stood in the moonlight, its carefully planned proportions and sophisticated features a testament to human ingenuity. Professor Zethkara realized that her research was documenting something far more significant than she had anticipated. The fourth day of construction brought the most surprising developments yet. Professor Zethkara arrived at the site to find Jake Harrison working on what appeared to be a complex arrangement of polished stones and metal pieces salvaged from old colony equipment. The setup looked far more sophisticated than anything she had expected to see in basic shelter construction. "Good morning, Professor," Jake called out. "I'm setting up the power generation system." "Power generation?" Professor Zethkara activated her recording equipment with trembling hands. "You're creating electrical systems using primitive materials?" Lisa Parks emerged from inside the partially completed structure, carrying what looked like bundles of processed plant fibers. "Jake found some great conductive materials in those caves we surveyed. With a little processing, they work almost as well as copper wire." Clicks pointed his device at Jake's work area. "The humans appear to be constructing technology rather than simple shelter. This exceeds all parameters of our study." Jake held up a flat piece of polished stone that gleamed in the morning sunlight. "These crystal formations are perfect for solar collection. They convert sunlight to electrical energy when arranged properly. I learned about this technique from some research papers back at the colony." Professor Zethkara watched in amazement as Jake carefully positioned dozens of the crystal panels in a precise geometric pattern. Each panel was connected to the next using thin strands of processed plant material that Lisa had prepared. "How do you know the correct arrangement?" The professor asked. "Trial and error, mostly," Jake replied, adjusting the angle of a panel. "Plus some basic understanding of how photovoltaic systems work. The crystals need to be positioned at the right angle to capture maximum sunlight, and the connections have to be in series to build up voltage." Lisa was working inside the structure, running the plant fiber cables through carefully drilled holes in the walls. Jake's solar system should generate enough power for lighting and basic electrical needs. "I'm setting up the distribution network." The aliens observed as the humans created what could only be described as a sophisticated electrical grid. Lisa had designed a system that would carry power from the solar collectors to various points throughout the structure. "Where did you learn?" "Electrical engineering," Clicks asked Lisa. "Started as a hobby when I was a kid," Lisa replied, connecting two cables with a carefully crafted junction. "My dad was an electrician and he taught me the basics. I've been working with electrical systems for about 15 years now." Professor Zethkara made notes about the humans' technical knowledge. The electrical system they were installing was more advanced than the power systems used by some civilizations. She had studied. Jake had moved on to another unexpected project. He was constructing what appeared to be a water management system using bamboo-like plants and carefully shaped stones. The system started at the nearby stream and ran toward the structure in a carefully planned route. "You are bringing water directly to your shelter?" Professor Zethkara asked. "Why not?" Jake replied, adjusting the flow through a section of plant-based piping. "Running water makes life much easier. Plus, I can use the water flow to generate a little extra power." He showed the aliens a small wheel he had constructed from wood and stone. The flowing water turned the wheel, which was connected to another set of electrical components. "Hydroelectric power," Lisa explained. "It's a backup system for when the solar panels aren't getting enough sunlight." "Very clever design." The professor watched as Jake installed his water system. The engineering was sophisticated, incorporating flow control, filtration, and even pressure regulation. The water would flow into the structure through a series of bamboo pipes and exit through a carefully designed drainage system. "This is remarkable," Professor Zethkara said. "You have created multiple power generation systems and integrated water management. Most species we observe barely manage basic weather protection." "It's not that complicated," Jake replied. "Once you understand the principles, it's just a matter of applying them with available materials." Lisa had finished the electrical installation and was now working on lighting systems. She had created what appeared to be electric lights using processed crystals and plant-based components. "These lights will provide illumination throughout the structure," she explained, demonstrating a working light fixture. "The crystals emit light when electrical current passes through them. It's similar to LED technology but using natural materials." The aliens watched in fascination as Lisa tested the lighting system. Each light fixture was carefully positioned to provide optimal illumination for different activities. Jake was now working on what he called climate control systems. He had created a network of channels and chambers within the walls that would circulate air and regulate temperature. "The thermal mass walls we built yesterday will store heat during the day," he explained. "This air circulation system will distribute that heat evenly throughout the structure at night." Professor Zethkara realized that the humans were not just building shelter, they were creating a fully integrated living environment. The structure incorporated power generation, water management, lighting, heating, and ventilation systems. "Your species appears to have remarkable technical capabilities," she said. "This level of system integration is unprecedented in our research." "Humans are pretty good at figuring things out," Lisa replied. "We've been solving problems like this for thousands of years. You just adapt the solutions to whatever materials you have available." Jake had moved on to interior construction. He was building what appeared to be furniture directly into the structure itself. Shelving units, work surfaces, and seating areas were all being constructed as integral parts of the building. "Built-in furniture is more efficient," he explained. "It saves space and materials, and it's stronger than separate pieces." The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Each piece of furniture was carefully designed and perfectly fitted. The work surfaces were level and smooth, the shelving was precisely spaced, and the seating areas were comfortable and ergonomic. Lisa was installing what she called smart systems using her electrical network. She had created simple switches and controls that would operate the lighting, ventilation, and water systems. "These controls will let you adjust everything from one central location," she explained. "Lights, air circulation, water flow, even temperature control." Professor Zethkara watched as Lisa demonstrated the control systems. With simple switches, she could turn lights on and off, adjust airflow, and control water flow throughout the structure. "You have created automated systems," the professor said. "This represents a level of technological sophistication we did not expect." "It's really just basic automation," Jake replied. "Once you have electrical power and mechanical systems, you can create simple controls to operate them." As the day progressed, the aliens observed more and more sophisticated features being added to the structure. Jake installed a communication system that could contact the main colony using crystal-based transmitters. Lisa created a simple computer system using processed materials that could monitor and control all the building systems. "This communication device will let you stay in touch with the outside world," Jake explained, adjusting the crystal transmitter. "The range is about 50 kilometers, which should reach the colony easily." The computer system was perhaps the most impressive feature. Lisa had created a simple but functional device that could display information about power generation, water flow, temperature, and other building systems. "It's like having a smart home system," she said. "You can monitor everything and make adjustments as needed." By evening, the structure was nearly complete. What had started as a simple shelter-building project had become something far more sophisticated. The humans had created a fully integrated living environment with power generation, water management, lighting, climate control, communication, and automation systems. Professor Zethkara reviewed her recordings with growing amazement. The humans had not just exceeded her expectations, they had completely redefined what she thought was possible with basic materials and simple tools. "This is not primitive construction," she told Clicks. "This is advanced engineering using indigenous materials. The humans have created something that rivals the technology of much more advanced civilizations." The structure stood in the gathering darkness, its crystal lights glowing softly and its systems humming quietly. It was a testament to human ingenuity and technical capability that would force Professor Zethkara to completely revise her understanding of what humans could accomplish. The fifth and final day of construction dawned with Professor Zethkara feeling completely unprepared for what she might witness. Her research equipment had recorded 4 days of the most sophisticated building techniques she had ever observed, and she suspected the humans were not finished surprising her. Jake Harrison was putting finishing touches on what could only be described as a luxury dwelling. The structure that had begun as a simple shelter-building exercise now resembled something that might house wealthy colonists or important officials. Every surface was carefully finished, every system was perfectly integrated, and every detail showed remarkable attention to quality. "Good morning, Professor," Jake called out as he adjusted something on the roof. "Just finishing up the last few details." Lisa Parks emerged from inside the structure, carrying a small device that displayed various readings. "All systems are online and functioning perfectly. Power generation is exceeding our needs, water pressure is steady, and the climate control is maintaining ideal temperature." Professor Zethkara activated her recording equipment for the final time. "You have completed your shelter construction?" "Pretty much," Jake replied, climbing down from the roof. "Would you like a tour?" The professor followed Jake and Lisa to the entrance of the structure. The door was a masterpiece of woodworking, fitted with crystal panels that provided natural light while maintaining privacy. The hinges were crafted from local materials but worked as smoothly as any manufactured hardware. "Welcome to our temporary home," Lisa said, opening the door. The interior took Professor Zethkara's breath away. The space was bright and airy, with natural light streaming through carefully positioned windows. The walls were smooth and finished, painted with natural pigments that created warm, pleasant colors. The floor was level and polished, made from fitted stone that felt solid underfoot. "This is remarkable," the professor said, looking around the main room. "The craftsmanship is extraordinary." Jake pointed to various features as they walked through the space. The lighting system provides even illumination throughout the day and night. The crystal fixtures are adjustable so you can control the brightness in different areas. Lisa demonstrated the electrical controls. These switches operate everything from the lights to the ventilation system. You can customize the environment for different activities or times of day. The professor watched as Lisa adjusted the lighting and air circulation with simple controls. The systems responded immediately, creating exactly the conditions she had selected. "The heating system is particularly efficient," Jake continued, showing her the thermal mass walls. "During the day, these walls absorb heat from the sun. At night, they release that heat gradually, keeping the interior comfortable without any additional energy input." Professor Zethkara touched one of the walls and felt the gentle warmth radiating from the stone. "This is passive solar heating at its most sophisticated level." The kitchen area was fully functional, with running water, food storage, and even a cooking system that used concentrated solar energy. Jake had created a solar oven that could reach high temperatures using focused sunlight and polished reflectors. "You can cook full meals with this system," Lisa explained. "It's clean, efficient, and uses no fuel except sunshine." The professor examined the solar cooking system. It was ingeniously designed, with adjustable reflectors that could focus sunlight precisely where needed. The cooking surface reached temperatures that would handle any food preparation task. "The water system includes hot water heating," Jake said, showing her a clever arrangement of pipes and solar collectors. "The water flows through these coils, which are heated by the sun. You get hot water whenever you need it." Lisa led them to the communication center, where the crystal transmitter was housed. "This system can reach the main colony easily. It also has emergency broadcast capabilities in case of problems." The professor listened as Lisa demonstrated the communication system. The signal was clear and strong, with no static or interference. The technology was surprisingly advanced for equipment built from local materials. "The automation system monitors everything," Jake explained, showing her a control panel with multiple displays. Power generation, water flow, temperature, humidity, even air quality. If anything needs adjustment, the system will alert you. Professor Zethkara stared at the monitoring displays. They showed real-time data about every system in the structure. Power generation was running at 115% of current needs. Water pressure was steady at optimal levels. Temperature was perfectly controlled throughout the building. "This is not a simple shelter," she said slowly. "This is advanced habitat technology." "It's just a weekend cabin," Jake replied. "Nothing too fancy? Weekend cabin?" Clicks asked. "This structure rivals the temporary facilities used by our own research teams," Lisa laughed. "This is pretty basic construction for humans. If you want to see something impressive, you should." Visit the main colony. We're building multi-story research facilities and industrial complexes there. The professor walked through the structure again, taking in details she had missed on the first tour. The craftsmanship was flawless. Every joint was perfect, every surface was smooth, every system was professionally installed. The overall design was both functional and beautiful. The waste management system is completely integrated, Jake explained, showing her the final major feature. All water is recycled, organic waste is composted, and the system is designed to have minimal environmental impact. Professor Zethkara examined the waste management system. It was sophisticated enough to handle all the needs of the structure's occupants while maintaining perfect sanitation and environmental responsibility. Your species has remarkable engineering capabilities, she said. This level of system integration and environmental harmony is unprecedented in our research. Humans have been building things for a long time, Lisa replied. We've learned to work with natural systems rather than against them. Jake was packing up his tools, a task that took several minutes given the variety of sophisticated instruments he had used. If you need any additional construction work while you're here, just let me know. I'm always happy to help with building projects. Additional construction? Professor Zethkara asked. Sure, storage buildings, workshops, maybe a greenhouse if you're planning to stay long-term, whatever you need. The professor stared at Jake as he casually offered to build additional structures. The humans seemed to regard the sophisticated dwelling they had just completed as a simple warm-up project. How long would it take you to construct a larger facility? She asked. Jake considered the question. Depends on what you need. A workshop might take a week. A full laboratory complex could take a month or two, depending on the specifications. Laboratory complex? Clicks asked. Research facilities with clean rooms, specialized equipment areas, data processing centers, that sort of thing, Lisa explained. We built several of them at the main colony. Professor Zethkara felt her understanding of human capabilities shift once again. The sophisticated structure they had just completed was not an exceptional achievement for these humans. It was routine. Construction that they could repeat or expand as needed. I think we need to completely revise our assessment of human technological capabilities, she told Clicks. This species is far more advanced than we initially believed. Jake finished packing his tools and looked around the completed structure. One final time, everything looks good? The systems should run automatically, but if you have any problems, just contact the colony. Someone can come out to help. As the humans prepared to leave, Professor Zethkara stood in the doorway of the remarkable structure they had built. The luxury cabin was a testament to human ingenuity, technical skill, and environmental awareness. It represented capabilities that exceeded her wildest expectations. Thank you for allowing us to observe your construction process, she said. This has been the most remarkable research project of my career. Our pleasure, Jake replied. Hope the cabin serves you well during your stay. As the humans walked away, Professor Zethkara realized that her understanding of human civilization would never be the same. The species she had initially classified as moderately intelligent tool users had revealed themselves to be master engineers, capable of creating sophisticated technology from basic materials. The luxury cabin stood as proof that humans didn't just survive in new environments. They thrived, creating comfort and functionality wherever they went. Her research would have to be completely rewritten, and her respect for human capabilities would last for the rest of her life.